Hey there. Welcome to Pages of Ascension. Welcome back if you've been hanging out with me for a while. So this is going to be another unboxing video. This one is for Gods and Titans Oracle cards by Stacey Demarco. Illustrations done by Jimmy Manton. This is a 38 card deck and is entirely focused on masculine energy, divine masculine energy. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to get it. I've definitely got some plans in mind for this and a couple other decks of a series. Not sure if I'm going to do them all on Patreon or put some of them on YouTube. But in any case, so this is an unboxing. So it's a nice, good, sturdy deck. I will likely store these cards in here. It's got a little insert for it there. And there's the back. Huh. So yeah. The book is actually, it's really nice. It's bound, about the size of your hand. It goes into detail about each of these gods or titans, depending on who you look at or depending on which card. And there's a standard, it talks about the god, talks about like what the meaning for them coming up. Oh my gosh, I can't talk, I swear. The reason the card may come up for you, the shadow side of the card, the symbols, and even an invocation that you can say to help embody that energy if it's something that you find you're needing to work on. So as per usual with my unboxing videos, I show you each of the cards and then I shuffle them on camera. I draw one card and then I read the entire description for that one card out of the book just to give you an idea of what the format is like. For those of you that are new and who actually do prefer to hop right into the book and study and prime your decks, let me put it that way. That's something that I do. I actually make it a point to do that just because, especially with a lot of the newer decks that are coming out, even though they may be based on, say, the Golden Dawn system or the Rider-Waite system, even if it's kind of like a New Age tarot thing, it's always good to get the interpretation or the viewpoint of the person who's doing the cards, just to get an idea of the type of energy they were aiming for. Now, just because that's what the book says doesn't necessarily mean that's what you want to get, but it costs a lot of money and a lot of hard work and effort goes into making these decks. So I consider it to be just a small token of respect for the hard work of the people who made this deck. So that said, I'm going to go ahead and start showing the cards now. There might be a little bit of commentary. And then we will shuffle. So, oh my goodness. Okay. We got this. So, and for the most part, this deck is pretty inclusive across pantheons and ethnicities. For the most part, there's some that's missing, but quite frankly, I haven't actually seen an entire deck focused on the divine masculine. So that's already a pretty amazing feat in and of itself to just have a deck focused on that energy. Yeah, my only gripe would be for this deck would be that they do cover Egypt as the African pantheon, but there's more than just the Egyptian pantheon as far as African pantheons go. So I always really like it when I see some representation for the 7 African powers or the Orishas, which if you watch the Dark Goddess unboxing. They actually have Oya in there. And she is from that particular pantheon. But of course, as you're doing your research on these types of like deities and stuff, I'm pretty sure that it can be just a little bit difficult to find consistent information. So I do definitely applaud the theme of this deck. It's exactly what I was looking for as far as energy is concerned, masculine energy is concerned. So I'm really excited to prime and use this deck. Osiris, Poseidon. Gotta say, Poseidon's looking pretty hot. Anyways. Sit. They even have Thoth. That's boss. And not necessarily something I'd expect to see. While Thoth is commonly referred to, or I should say acknowledged, if you will, in some decks, like you definitely don't see Thoth as a card on its own, even in decks that follow the Hermetic system. So that's really cool. Zeus. Some of these I've never heard of before, and they look a little meh. All right, so we have Achilles. Okay, so those were the cards. So my favorite way to shuffle, they shuffle like that just fine. They're nice and thick, but not so thick that I can't shuffle them like this. If you are someone who prefers to shuffle this way, it might be a little harder for smaller hands, so keep that in mind. But they do, they shuffle well. The card stock is good. It won't wear down very quickly. The edges might, just because that's the nature of these types of cards. But that's really not that big of a deal. It still doesn't, it doesn't actually mark the card. So let's see which one we come out with. Okay, I'm not taking both. I guess we will read Hades, because Hades popped out on top. Okay. So Hades' death. All right, so that's what that looks like. So it says Hades, standing for death. Death is not always a negative thing. Everything has a season. Leave behind what you no longer need. The three-headed dog. Actually, hold it up for you. The three-headed dog, Cerberus, guards the gates of the underworld, snarling and growling at anything that moves. The dog's jaws drip pools of saliva onto the cool, dark stone. Soon, a solitary figure approaches. It is Hades himself. His dog calms and submits its three heads for petting. The master has arrived. Hades is the Greek god of death. His name comes from the Hellenic word for invisible. This is because the realm of the underworld, also referred to as Hades, is invisible to all. Hades also owns a special helmet, permitting the wearer to be undetectable. This weapon is featured in a number of stories, and many other gods wear it in war. Hades inherited the underworld when Kronos Cronus divided the territories. His brothers Zeus and Poseidon received the sky and the sea, respectively. Wealthy due to the unlimited precious metals in his kingdom, Hades was intelligent and not at all monstrous. Although feared by man, Hades was not a particularly nasty god and looked for love, just like his brothers did. The story of Persephone is possibly the most famous story featuring Hades, and one that shows death is just a cyclic part of life. Hades fell in love with Zeus and Demeter's daughter, Persephone, and Zeus promised Hades her hand in marriage. Demeter, however, did not agree to the match or even tell Persephone about the offer. In his frustration, Hades kidnapped the lovely young woman and taking her down deep into his dark domain, he tried to woo her. Demeter, goddess of agriculture and loving mother, searched the world for her daughter, and in grief, stopped facilitating the growth and production of all food and plants. Everything died, and man began to starve. The gods figured out that Hades had Persephone, and Zeus asked for her release to end the famine. However, Persephone had eaten 6 pomegranate seeds, complicating the situation. As the fates ruled, anyone who consumed food or drink in the underworld must stay. Demeter and Hades eventually negotiated that Persephone would live 6 months of the year with Hades and 6 months with Demeter, which is why every 6 months the earth dies and Hades claims the season, winter, and his bride. Should Hades come forth in your life, this does not normally signify a physical death. An ending or a leaving behind is more likely, and this is not always a negative thing. Everything has a lifespan. In particular, ideas, beliefs, and fears that have passed their expiration date. Sometimes, in order for growth to occur, death must too. Prepare to let go of ideas, aspects of your personality, or even a specific phase of a relationship to make way for new ones. Shadow side. Hades was impetuous, impatient, and let's face it, not exactly honest all the time. If we recognize these qualities in ourselves and seek to understand why we act the way we do, we will be better able to accept and make room for new and healthier aspects. Scrupulous honesty is required for a start. While this darker face of ourselves might not be appealing to us and we may be tempted to take it underground, the only way to truly change it is to make it visible, at least to ourselves. By recognizing our shadow aspects, we can make changes that allow some of these aspects to transform or simply die away. So the symbols: Cerberus, 2-pronged pitchfork, Narcissus flower, scepter, precious metals. So symbols could provide synchronicities for some people with these particular readings. So the invocation that they list for this says, Hades must be carefully invoked only in certain circumstances and only by experienced practitioners. For most, though a ritual facilitating the death of a habit or belief that has run its course is useful. For example, you may decide to give up junk food, the feeling that you have to hide who you truly are around others, or the old belief that you aren't good enough. The best time to do this ritual is during a dark moon or in a waning moon cycle. You need a black candle, a rock, a pen, and paper. Please do some careful thinking ahead of time about what it is you wish to let go. Light the candle and say. Now, because it is an actual invocation with a ritual, I am not going to read it on camera. If that's something that you're interested in, I would suggest going out and buying this deck, Gods and Titans, Stacey Demarco and Jimmy Manton. So yeah, I actually really appreciate that this deck talks about the shadow side of the masculine. That's kind of the reason why I also got the Dark Goddess deck, because it talks about the shadow aspect of the divine feminine. And it is my personal belief and in my experience that especially when you're trying to manifest things in your life and you're trying to change your life for the better, it is necessary to master that shadow side, that shadow self, because when you're operating out of ego, you can actually trip yourself up and trip up your own process. Like I said, it's a little harder to avoid the pitfalls if you don't even know what they are. Okay, so that said, they do give out, they do provide actual tools, dedications you can do for your card, how to use the card, and several different spreads to see what appeals to you for the Divine Masculine. So yeah, that is Gods and Titans. So that said, thank you for joining me, my wonderful tribe of misfits. If you found this video helpful, I'd appreciate a like, and sharing is caring, of course. And definitely, if you love this type of content, definitely subscribe. I'm going to keep doing these unboxing videos as I come across new decks, just because, you know, it kind of sucks when you go to buy a deck and it's not exactly what you thought. So this is me working on behalf of the collective, especially those of us that work with cards as a tool for divination, to see if a deck is for you. Okay, so that said, gratitude for you always. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you next time.